Alright, welcome to the very first video on this channel. This is my 1977 F-150. And if you guys want to see what does it say, retard dive into a inline-six motor and seeing what the fuck is wrong with it, then I guess this channel is going to be for you. Bought this thing 4 years ago. As you can see, not going to look at that or the rest of the truck right now. That's for another day. We're just going to be focusing more on something I can probably handle other than body work. As you can see, it's been out of inspection for a few years now. I bought this 4 years ago whenever I was serving in the Marine Corps. This is my dream truck. I bought it, put a shit ton of money into it, like $3 grand in order to get that sticker on there, and probably still should have passed. And started driving it around, and well, she was burning oil pretty bad, and had a nasty ticker. Fuck me, exhaust. Well, holy fuck, if I could speak right. Anyway, the valves were making some rattling noises going on from up there, and it was just puking oil and just not having a good time with it. So we tore the valve cover off, inspected it. Everything looked to be all right. Assuming that the entire valve train was probably going to be replaced anyway. And yeah, and pulled the dipstick out after a 30-minute drive, and she was pretty much bone dry. So that's telling me that it is consuming oil somehow. The compression was pretty good from the guy that worked on it for me whenever I was serving. And I'm thinking it's coming from the valve train, so we're going to pull the head off of this and see where it takes us. Now, I already started the process of draining the coolant out of it. I started pulling the spark plugs out, and I was like, you know what? Might as well record this so you guys can make fun of me in the comments and tell me how I'm doing things wrong. And yeah, it's gonna be done wrong. You know, it's just the way it's gonna go. Surprisingly, really don't see too much of an oil leak anymore. The rear main was replaced. That was where the oil was coming from. And other than that, from my little trip that I did from my old hometown up to where I'm living now, it was running pretty good. Obviously, it was rattling itself apart at higher RPMs, and there's no oil pressure. So that's gonna be something else to look into. I'm hoping that whenever I pull the head, the cylinder walls and everything look all right. Maybe I can attempt to do an M-frame. That's what we do for the heavy duty trucks at our shop. I'm a diesel mechanic now, so I'm wondering if I can just do a quick little M-frame to it. You know, pistons, rings, bearings, little stuff like that, because we are hurting on money for this rig, and I kind of need something to get together so I can fix up this truck. And this truck is definitely going to need a lot of work done to it, more than what this truck needs. So I'm hoping that I can make this into a work pig and get around to doing the rest of the work to it later on. Now, I'm going to bring you over to the other side of the shop, and we'll show you something that I picked up on this a few years ago that I do plan on putting on this. I just don't think it's going to be anytime soon, just because, yeah, I just feel like it's going to be a little bit more than what this Wara engine can handle. All right, so in this box here, it's a box full of goodies. Probably not going to show you the entire thing. Probably just going to tease a little bit, but I'm assuming that if you guys worked on inline sixes and know anything about these, then you might know what I'm about to do to it. And that's a carburetor right there. That's the rest of the intake. So I'll show you guys that on a later date. Maybe whenever I'm ready to finally tear into this guy here. And yeah, we're going to continue draining the coolant and start from there. So I'll see you guys soon. All right, so we're back here. So the coolant is done draining. Don't think I really need to show you guys that, but I pulled each of the spark plugs out of each cylinder, so it goes 1 through 6, and the tips on all these are all really this nice light brown color, which would indicate that at least in my opinion, I mean, I'm not a fucking mechanic here, at least a automotive one. I'm a diesel mechanic, so spark plugs are kind of new to this guy here. But I'd assume that that'd be running pretty good. Now with my prior experience with like lawnmowers and stuff, don't think it's really translates over to that. But usually if they're running really rich, it'd be really, really black. And you don't want them too white because that would indicate it being too lean. You kind of want a nice golden color to them. At least that's what I was always taught. Now that looks pretty good. But as you start to go further down into the threads, number one is just covered in oil. And number two is going to be the same thing, right? Nice, if it focuses, nice brown color there, right? And the threads are little bits covered in oil. A little bit of soot there on the edge of it. And that's going to be the same for pretty much every single one of these. Same coloring. It's just, it doesn't look too bad. That doesn't look bad. That looks pretty good. Yeah, right? Then we get to the number 6 one. Looks perfect. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you guys this. But also look down inside of the cylinders. At least I can kind of see. It looks like number 1 is almost the top dead center there. And I'm not going to be able to show you just because I won't be able to get a good zoom. But basically, number 1, number 2, and I think that's our main culprits. I can look down on top of the piston and I can just see nasty black oil substance. Like it's not really burning completely in there, which I'm surprised the spark plugs aren't indicating that. Now this thing is burning oil. Like I said, just a little bit of a trip. It was completely full on dipstick. Drove about 30 minutes, pulled the dipstick out after it was parked up here, after by about 15-20 minutes of sitting, and barely anything on the dipstick. Now, if I wasn't stunned and a retard, I would have showed you guys this running and showed you the amount of smoke coming out of the exhaust, but I didn't, and here we are. So we're going to keep on going at this. I think the next step for me, after evaluating spark plugs and looking down inside each of the holes here, yeah, I think I am going to end up pulling the set off, but that's just the way it is, I guess. So, come over here. Think I'm going to remove the air box, all the vacuum lines and whatnot, kind of clear this mess out of the way. Remove the valve cover and kind of take you guys through that and see what we find. Not exactly too sure what I'm looking for. So, yeah, I guess I'll pull you guys back up once we get to that point. Well, alright, well there you have it. Got the carb off. Like I said, no experience with this at all. I'm just kind of throwing myself into it. I mean, I understand carburetors a little bit for like small engine repair and stuff like that, but not, this style. So, that is off. All the vacuum lines are off. Fuel line is off. Choke and throttle cable both off. I did drop a nut for the holds the carburetor down, so we'll never see that again. And I think the next step is probably going to be getting this valve cover off so we can take a closer look and see what's going on in there. Now, I don't want to be a surprise to any of you guys, but when I pull this off, I already can tell you're going to see a lot of sludge. This thing has obviously been behind on its oil changes in its life. This is not the original motor, at least I don't think it is, because this says non-catalyst. It's a 77, so I think that's emissions, right? So it should have some emissions on it. So I think this is an older motor. Truck says it has like a little over 100,000, so it's by 200, 300,000. But from the ride up here, I mean, this thing was riding pretty good for an old truck of this age, especially with all the cab mounts and everything else being pretty much rotted off of it. And that'll be a separate video I'll take you guys through whenever it's daylight out and there's a little bit more light in the shop. And I'll show you the undercarriage and what we're working with here, and I'll show you the transmission and the rear ends, and we'll go over all that so you guys can get a little bit better of a picture of what's going on. And we'll go over the parts list of the parts that was replaced on it, You can see some new hardware in certain spots. New power steering pump that already has the wind to it. I think no, that fuel pump wasn't replaced. The alternator is whining like crazy, and the belt squeal. It's just a good old reliable Ford that is torn apart next to my other reliable Ford. So yeah, I'll see you guys whenever this valve cover gets off. Well, all right, we're back, and just like I explained last time, so not to be surprised if there was any grime, and yeah, there is. So my only explanation for all this grime would be lack of oil changes, and that's why it's really important to change your oil. I know there's a lot of non-believers, especially if you go on like the deep channels of Reddit where people will be traveling like 40k miles with no oil changes because they don't believe in it, which is fucking idiotic. But here's another thing. So to my understanding, these valves you really can't adjust. There's no I don't think there's a way to adjust these. I think they're just kind of torqued down to spec, and then that's basically it, I think. But anyway, so there's definitely a lot of valve train noise, and I think I found out why. Loose, tight, which is probably on an exhaust stroke right now, right? Loose, and you get the picture the whole way back. Everything's loose, right? Which makes no sense because there should be a few other cylinders right now should be either on a intake or a exhaust stroke. So there should be something else, other rockers. If you don't know what the firing order is, which I don't, because like I said, I'm new to this, and all my experience comes from diesels. There should be another one tight. There isn't. They're all loose. So as I'm revving up the engine, the RPM's kicking up. That's got to be the rattling that I'm hearing, And yeah, I'm kind of terrified to pull this head off of here now because I almost guarantee you, every single one of these cylinders, at least for the cylinder walls, are all just going to be shot. I don't think it's going to be an easy in frame. Maybe just a swap in general. Make sure that was on the crack in the exhaust manifold, but I'm gonna take every single rocker off, put it in a baggie. In the diesel world, we label it all, so for the number one, usually you want to keep the rockers and push rods with its rockers, with its cylinder, and the push rods with the rockers. Now, I don't think these are different sizes, so I don't know if that's important or not, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep everything nice and labeled and go from there. At least I don't have to worry about pulling injectors or anything crazy like that. It should be pretty straightforward. Now here's the next step that's probably going to be a pain in the ass, let alone taking the intake and the exhaust manifolds off. What is the odds that I'm going to be able to break these head bolts loose with this little Porter Power over there, this little 1/2-inch gun? I'm going to say hell no, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to get some leverage in there and break some of those bolts loose. While we're talking about the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold, I forgot to mention, these are Hedman headers. I did have these installed. I did not do it personally. It was the guy that did all the work for me. I saw on a bunch of forums after I bought it that guys were saying that you can't install them. Well, he obviously did, and if you look further on down on the header towards the frame, you can see where you had to cut it in order for these to work. Now that kind of worries me because I don't condone cutting frames, but I don't think that's really going to hurt anything. And these do sound pretty good, past the whole lifter noise that you've been hearing. The entire exhaust actually has been pretty professionally put together by an exhaust shop, so I was actually really impressed with their work. And whenever we get to that point, I'll I'll climb under there and show you how they ran it for those guys that, hey, you might want these headmans on. I don't know. Going back and looking at it, I think I probably would have just did a heavy duty, what do they call it? The heavy duty exhaust manifolds, basically from like the old school dumps and heavier trucks that Ford came out with. They have a different exhaust manifold than the stock one, and apparently they flow a lot better. So probably should have just did that in hindsight, but it is what it is. I already paid for it. It's already on the truck, so it's gonna stay on the truck. So I'm gonna get this all loose, and then I'm probably gonna work on the intake and exhaust manifolds. Probably gonna break every single bolt, and then I'll see you guys then. Well, I am one defeated man here. So if you're ever wondering, should I put a pair of headman headers on a four-wheel drive truck whenever it calls, well, whenever the manufacturer says, hey, these will not work on a four-wheel drive system, don't fucking do it. Just save yourself the money. Don't do it. I feel bad for the guy that had put this on for me. Like 3 years ago. So he was joking around and he said, hey, if your starter ever goes, good luck changing it. And, being me, I really didn't think much of it until today, and I decided to completely tear it out just so we can get a better look in here. Just so I can show you guys, actually. And, with those headers in the way, going down the way they do, it completely blocks up that starter. It just barely fits around it. And so first I unbolted everything over here. That wasn't hard at all. But whenever it came to actually taking the headers out, I was like, how the hell did this guy do this? And I saw the oil pan was painted, and I knew he had that down. So I was like, you know what? I bet you he had to do it with that out of the way. So I dropped the oil pan down. Because you can't get the starter out even if you unbolt it, because it just rests against the headers. So dropped the pan and had to jack it up a little bit on the frame in order to get the suspension off a little bit in order for it to fall down out of place, just like you can do with the old DT 466. I don't know if any of you guys will be diesel mechanics working on international stuff, but you actually have to put a bottle jack in between the front springs, and it's real sketchy, but yeah, that's one way of doing it. But once that was all done, kind of inspecting everything around here, and whenever the headers were off, I was actually looking inside the exhaust port, expecting to see like a lot of oil residue, and I'm not seeing that. It's like bone dry in there. I haven't really checked the backside yet, but I guess an easy way of doing it would just be looking into the ports of the headers itself and seeing if it's there any black or soot or anything crazy. Yeah, just these those look fine too. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of mind-boggling me right now, because if it was burning oil, you'd think that it was leaking from the valve guide seats, that you'd be able to look inside there and see a bunch of oil, but I'm not seeing anything like that. And I know when this truck was running down the road, because of the way that the headers are, it's dual pipes out the back, and the driver's side was smoking. Was actually the one side that was smoking. The other side was pretty normal. And the old lady was following me back today, and she said at random times you could definitely tell it was just bellowing smoke. And I saw it out the rear view too, so I knew what she was talking about. And I drained the oil, and I don't know how many quarts came out of it. This was already half filled from the diff fluid I drained from this truck over here. And it was definitely low. I mean, I didn't pull the pan out, take a look at the pan yet, see what's going on. I did take a quick peek at the cams and the camshaft, and it does look like that's going to need replaced. Just judging from diesels, from the inline sixes and over to this, I mean, I think the manufacturer for Cummins or PACCAR or insert said name would would definitely tell you to replace those. So that's not looking good at all. So yeah, it's kind of a little update. That took like an hour and a half, 2 hours to do. So if you guys are thinking about putting headers onto a inline six in the 4-wheel drive, don't do it. I don't know if it's 2-wheel drive would be a little bit better, but I doubt it. It just seems like if your starter goes, which is very common, you're gonna have a lot of work involved in doing that. And now I understand why that guy cut the little bit of the frame out there, because without that, it really doesn't want to get past the frame rail there. So yeah, pretty much already know what's probably going to happen to this motor. It's definitely going to need either a rebuild, which I was planning on doing an in-frame. Because of the way that the cam is, I don't think you can just pull the front clip off and pull the cam out because it looks like it's rear gear driven. So yeah, it looks like it's the motor's either have to come out or just get a replacement, which kind of have to look at the prices and see if it's even worth rebuilding this one or if I can find a cheaper one. But I'm going to pull the rest of these out and probably going to attempt to remove some of these head bolts. And then we're going to call it here. I'm going to do a little bit of research, talk to some friends, and see what they think. So I'll see you once I get all these off and labeled and put in baggies and whatnot. Well, I forgot about you guys. No, not really. My fiance came in and she wanted to give me a hand, and I felt awkward pulling out the phone and interrupting that. So we got some bonding time in, tearing off the rockers and tearing the head off. Now I thought this thing would be a lot heavier, and I was able just to heave-ho it out there. So there's that. I mean, I'm used to big heavy-duty side and using a crane for everything. So that went by pretty smooth. So back to where we left off with the exhaust manifold. Didn't really see any oil in the manifold or evidence that the valve seats were leaking. Usually for the heavy duty side, you can tear off the manifold and kind of take a look inside at the valve itself, and you see traces of oil, leaking down. I didn't see anything like that. However, we also took the pistons out too, so you guys also missed out on that. Now I believe it was number 1, so we'll take a look at the top of it. See how wet that is? That's oil. I ran my finger through it, drill thick. It's on number 1, number 2. This side actually doesn't look too bad. Number 4 doesn't really look bad, and so forth the whole way back. So there's that. So I'm assuming, I don't know how the oil is making past. Maybe past the oil ring for the piston. Maybe it's frozen and it's not really come out. We really didn't take a look at it too much. Here's number 1. It moves around pretty good in there. I really don't know with these. Looked at all the bearings and everything for the rods. I think we got into there just at the nick of time. Some of these are looking pretty bad. You can see, some of the copper there from, at least on the truck side, these are designed to actually absorb the metal that comes from the oil and everything before it actually takes out the crank. So we got there to those in the nick of time, and I pulled off, I think it was number 5, main, and yeah, see the copper discolorization in there. Also the crank looks fine. We got there just in the nick of time. So I really don't feel a need to tear apart the rest of the caps. I fairly know that it's going to be all right. Just judging from this one, I believe with these side bearings, and I forget the name of them, but basically it's going to help the side to side of the crank itself. And at least on the ISX-15s, I think it's number 1 and number 4 are the ones that get the oil first. So if you pull off the number 4 and you take a look at it, usually you can determine if they're all bad. And this doesn't look bad, so we're gonna live with that. Now, the camshaft is another story. That's very worn. That's gonna need replaced. I think in the last little segment that I made that it was rear gear, and it's not. It's front. I can see the gears and everything in the front. So I don't know if that means that we can just take the front clip off and pull the cam out. Like I said, I'm gonna have to discuss this with some guys that know these things a little bit more than I do, and see where it goes from there. I also have some questions on the oil consumption. Where exactly is that coming from? Because you can look at the exhaust valves here, and they all look not wet or any evidence of it leaking. So where's the oil come from? That's the mystery. Well, thanks for watching. Like I said, I apologize for not showing you the complete teardown, but at least it's there. Oh, and if you guys were wondering, this Porter cable here was capable of breaking those head bolts loose. And surprisingly, yes, it got all but one. And I had to break out the old Harbor Freight's Harbor Freight Extendo to break it free by hand, which is pretty tough, and then took it out with the impact. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty impressive little gun for how much it cost. I think it was like 149 bucks, so it wasn't bad. So appreciate you guys for watching. Leave any feedback if things you want to see differently. It's the first video, so you're going to see a lot more of this and possibly some of this. Thanks.